Hi, everyone. Welcome to The Big Picture. I'm Penny Wolfgang, in for Phil Arno, who's on assignment. We here at The Big Picture aim to take an in-depth look at many of the issues facing us here in our community. And since May is Mental Health Awareness Month, we want to make you aware of the importance of mental health for each and every one of us. Your neighbor, your colleague, your friends, your parents, you. Approximately 1 in 5 people are living with a mental health diagnosis, yet many of these people suffer in silence because of the discrimination that goes along with it. So we're having a conversation today on WBBZ to help end the stigma surrounding mental illness, to help end some of the common myths and stereotypes that many of us hear about the disease. Joining us is Ken Houseknecht, who's the Executive Director of the Mental Health Advocates of Erie County. And a little later, Kate Hedinger is the Development Director of Compeer of Greater Buffalo, and she's going to be here to tell us how we can be a superhero, you can, and help a worthy cause and have fun too. So welcome, Ken, and thank you for joining us. And I just want to give a few little credentials about you so people know how knowledgeable you are and experience that in this subject of mental health, that you have been with the association for 40 years?
40 years.
I'm allowed to say that, you told me.
I started when I was 18 months old.
Yes, I was going to say, you were kindergarten.
Yeah.
And Ken, for the last 8 years, has been the executive director. So we're really glad you could join us today during this important month of mental health month.
I'm happy to be here.
Mental health awareness. And like I said, we feel that this is something so many members of our community are struggling with, that we want to make everyone aware of. For example, the difference between when we say mental health or mental illness, what's the difference between health and mental illness?
Yeah.
Mental health and mental illness.
That's a good question. You quoted a statistic that 1 in 5 people at any given moment in time are dealing with a mental health issue, which means 4 out of 5 people are not. So the way I like to think about this is we really want to promote mental health and wellness wherever we can. We do that through awareness, through education, through prevention activities, through early detection and early intervention. We want to show people what it looks like to be mentally healthy and well, behaviors that will contribute to that, and we want to start very young with children. And we've got programs, many agencies in Western New York and across the country have programs that do that. And then for those individuals and families who are dealing with mental health issues, we want to surround those people with the most comprehensive package of services, clinical and non-clinical, to get those folks back to the fullest, best version of their life that they can possibly have.
I know you're saying, the younger the better, and I agree with that, but I think the question in people's minds is, what are some of the signs? How would you know if your young person, or you, like I said, your child, your grandchild, is suffering from or struggling? I know you told me to use that word, struggling, with some kind of mental illness. What would be the signs?
So with a child, a young person, you would look for any sort of disruption in their normal behavior pattern. Are they sleeping differently? Has their eating changed? Are their social behaviors different? Have you noticed a change in their mood? And then you're probably asking yourself, is this just the normal behavior that you would have for a child who is beginning school or going through some sort of a normal transition? Is you're going from being a young person to an adolescent to becoming an adult? And at what point is it worrisome? And I would always argue in favor of erring on the side of caution. You do the same thing with your physical health. If you thought that something might be amiss, if you thought that something was a little bit off, you would go to your doctor and check, and they could alleviate your concerns.
Of course.
You would want to do the same thing in the world of mental health and behavioral health. Increasingly, doctors are being educated to be alert to the beginning of mental health signs and symptoms. Teachers are much more alert and aware. Our partners and friends at Compeer do a program which is an international program called Mental Health First Aid, And that's where you go into a variety of different environments, including an academic environment, a school environment, and you educate people. And many districts here in Western New York have educated every single person to be able to recognize signs and symptoms of mental health and its loss, and appropriate ways to respond, and resources that are available in this community.
Now, I think we mentioned this at the beginning, and we're always going to keep talking about this. I think one of the issues that prevents a parent or a teacher from saying something if they do see these signs is the fear of what we call stigma, that people will look down on you or be afraid of you or shun you. The child won't have friends, that kind of thing. And I know that you've been working, and the whole community is working to eliminate the stigma involved with mental issues.
Yeah. So we're part of a coalition. There are dozens of community organizations. You can find information on that at letstalkstigma.org. And it's a terrific community awareness campaign that I think is getting people to talk. And the overarching theme is join the conversation.
Right.
When I hear the word stigma, I replace it with 3 other words that I think people can understand and apprehend a little more quickly. First is silence. Stigma equals silence. We just don't talk about it. Or we talk about it in muted tones, or only among a very few people. Silence. The second is shame. Like there's something wrong with me. Like I'm broken in some way, like I'm deficient. And then the third is separation. I'll deal with this on my own. My family will deal with this on our own. We say that mental health is not a casserole illness. If somebody's suffering from another illness like cancer, family members and friends will bring a casserole over. That doesn't happen with mental health issues. So if we're going to combat stigma, we can't be silent. There's no reason for shame. If you've got some sort of a brain disorder, if you've gone through some sort of a trauma, if you're dealing with anxiety or depression, as we know 1 in 5 Americans are, and unfortunately the trend lines in subgroups of our larger community are going in a bad direction, no reason for shame, and you don't want to stay silent. The analogy that we use all the time is, if you broke your leg, you would not walk with a broken leg for 10 years and think that it might get better on its own. And yet people with mental health conditions often do. Only 40% of people with a mental health issue ever get help. Only 4 in 10.
4 in 10.
And many of the people who get help wait a long time, often a decade. And then that small issue is allowed to grow into something larger, more complicated, more difficult, more costly, and there's no reason for that.
You know what I think is in this join the conversation issue, more talking, less whispering is, I think, one of the quotes. However, what's really important, and which you point out, is that not only so many people are suffering, but that the cure, I don't know if you want a cure, but treatment, I'm not sure what words you're using, that so many people are living with it, once treated, they're fine, or they're able to live with it.
Well, there is virtually no mental health condition, virtually none, that can't be made better with treatment. I don't think people realize that. That's really important. Some people may have been living with mental health conditions, and you may know them as coworkers, neighbors. Right. They go to your house of worship. You have known them for decades. You don't know that that's part of their life because they're so successful in integrating that into who they are, and they're living victoriously with that mental health condition. I'm not trying to minimize how difficult it is for some people and with some struggles, just as it is with physical health issues. Sometimes something very difficult and very challenging comes into someone's life, but that does not diminish the reality that every single mental health condition, virtually without exception, can be made better with treatment.
And when you say with treatment, sometimes it means different kinds of treatment. I mean, it's not always medication, but it could be medication, or it could be combinations, or that kind of thing.
Yeah. So generally, you want to put treatment in two categories. There's clinical, and there's non-clinical. Clinical is talk therapy.
That's what I was thinking.
And medicine. And there have been enormous advances in psychiatric medicines.
You read that every day. Every day they're coming up with a new medication.
They're better, they're more specifically targeted, they have less disastrous side effects, there is more robust study behind them, and they're a very effective way of treating people. Non-clinical would be things like peer support, getting together with people who are living through experiences similar to yours. Compere's got a wonderful program where it matches people who agree to spend an hour a week with someone to be their friend. So it's not a professional relationship, it's a friendship.
We're going to bring that to our viewers' attention shortly. Thank you so much for talking to us during Mental Health Awareness Month. We really appreciate it. And if you want more information, you can go to the website eriemha.org. We're going to be right back to continue the conversation with Ken while finding out how we can be a superhero for mental health. Stay with us, please.